Thanks for being with us tonight. Hello, good evening. I'm Blake Burman. This is The Hill on News Nation. So after more than 2 years of waiting, tears of joy in Israel. The last 20 living hostages held by Hamas reunited with their families today. President Trump describing it as an historic dawn of the new Middle East, as the first phase of his peace plan between Israel and Hamas holds. Trump in Israel this morning, Egypt this afternoon, and on his way back home right now. Also tonight, what was Vladimir Putin thinking? Is Trump now going to send Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine? His comments on Air Force One as the Ukrainian leader is soon headed for the Oval Office. And was it all one big multi-trillion-dollar misunderstanding? What the U.S. and China are now saying after threats of controls and massive tariffs. But first tonight here from the Hill, freedom, joy, and perhaps a new dawn. 738 days later, the final 20 hostages back home tonight, freed from Hamas captivity 2 years after a surprise attack that shook a nation and drove the Middle East into war. Throughout this morning, scenes like this, one by one, of hostages no more reuniting with their families. The first phase of President Trump's 20-point peace plan. With all that unfolding, the president on the ground in Israel, speaking before the Knesset, Israel's parliament, the first time an American president has done so since 2008.
The hostages are back. It feels so good to say it. This week, against all odds, we have done the impossible and brought our hostages home.
That ceasefire taking hold tonight across Israel and Gaza. Hamas also agreeing to return all the remains of the deceased hostages, 4 bodies, returned today. Israel also releasing nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners, and humanitarian aid trucks are rolling into Gaza. After the president gave that hour-long speech in the heart of Israel, he flew to Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, a gathering there of world leaders to discuss the future of the Middle East.
Let us continue in the spirit of cooperation and goodwill that has finally brought us to this incredible, historic breakthrough. If we do together, we will reach the Middle East's incredible destiny, a safe and prosperous and beautiful crossroads of culture and commerce, faith and humanity, and geographic center.
All right, so here's where we begin tonight here on the Hill. Mick Mulvaney, Chris Cillizza joining me in a moment. But first to our man out there who's been on the ground for 2 years now, our Robert Sherman, live in Israel tonight. Robert, long day, long morning, long night for you, but this is the moment that so many were waiting for. What was it like, Robert, being there in Israel on this day?
Well, up to the very moment that these hostages came out of Gaza and returned to Israeli soil, there was just this nervous energy engulfing the entire country. Felt as though you were either at Hostages Square in the midst of the frenzy, or you were sitting at home with your family, with your loved ones, your hands clenched, hoping and praying that everything would go off without a hitch today. And in the end, we saw these scenes of embrace, of raw emotion pouring out. This is the family of Guy Gilboa Delal, who we just spoke with a couple of days ago, and they told us they believed this was now or never territory. If not today, if he didn't come out today, they feared they would never see him ever again. Well, now he's home on Israeli soil. The same can be said for all of the 20 living hostages. And Hamas is set to release the remains of all of those who were killed. 4 have come back so far tonight. Under the original parameters of the deal, all 28 were supposed to come home this evening, with the president saying this today. Take a listen.
They're going and looking for bodies. It's a pretty gruesome task. And they know where numerous are, and they search parties out, and they're doing it in conjunction with Israel. And they're going to be finding quite a few of them.
The president making clear he wants the focus to shift towards rebuilding Gaza, starting life anew for the people who are there, saying today that it is going to be a collective effort from nations around the region.
I'm pleased to announce that numerous countries of great wealth and power and dignity have come forward to me, and just today and over the last week, to say they want to help in the reconstruction of Gaza, putting up whatever money is necessary.
And then there's the big picture to all of this. The president making clear he wants to expand the Abraham Accords, expand diplomacy with Israel, and create a new Middle East. That's the big plan here. Blake?
Tel Aviv tonight, 1 o'clock in the morning. There are Robert Sherman once again for us on the ground. Robert, thank you. President Trump meeting with hostage families today. It was a one-day trip right there and back. But Egypt, Israel, and so much on the ground there for the president, including this. He spoke to those families about their release in Jerusalem.
After 2 harrowing years in darkness and captivity, 20 courageous hostages are returning to the glorious embrace of their families, and it is glorious. 28 more precious loved ones are coming home at last to rest in this sacred soil for all of time.
One of the many scenes today. Joining us now, Mick Mulvaney, former White House chief of staff in the first Trump administration, News Nation contributor, and Chris Cillizza, News Nation contributor, host of So What, as well on YouTube and Substack. Chris, Mick, hello, gentlemen.
Is that really the name of his blog? Is So What? Is that
it is, but there's a lot to get to with him on that. So look, this was a huge day. And that is one of many ways to put it. Mick, I picked up on, I thought there was some relief from the president today. I mean, think about when he came into office with this, right? And he described it as the impossible. And so many were looking forward to this moment. It was sort of, obviously the speech as the commander in chief of the leader of the free world. But I don't know, I picked up on some sort of lighter moments today from the president as well.
I picked up on the lighter moments. I was fascinated to watch his speeches because I put them on a spectrum from the really, really serious stuff, the 2 most serious speeches typically being the State of the Union and then the United Nations General Assembly, all the way down to the least formal stuff, which is the rally speeches. And this was sort of in the middle. So if your point is that there was a sense of relief and a sense of, I don't have to be 100% on right here, I think that's probably fair. I thought the speech was really, really well written. My guess is Stephen Miller probably had a lot to do with it, and there was some really impressive stuff. But look, the one thing I think not enough people are talking about, this is great, and if it holds, it holds. We all hope it holds. Whether or not it holds, the Iran thing, I think, is still bigger. I really do. I think Trump has managed to change the course of history, the arc of history, by doing what he did with Iran. And regardless of what happens going forward with Gaza, Iran is not now in the same position as they were 3-4 months ago. And that's a big, big deal.
Cillizza, Iran, he said, quote, "I'm telling you they want to make a deal." That was the other, I thought, big observation here, was that Trump felt vindicated for his decision to send those B-2 bombers into Iran in the middle of the night, drop those bombs on the nuclear facilities. And both Netanyahu and Trump said, if it wasn't for that, we don't get this.
I was intrigued by that, connecting those dots. And I think it does make some sense if you think about it, Blake, right? It's showing like, we're not kidding. Number one, we have Israel's back. Number two, we're not kidding around, right? If you're Hamas, you see that and say, okay, well, this is a serious thing. I mean, I always defer to Mick when it comes to foreign policy stuff. I do. There's so many ifs, I think, as we look forward. But I think you have to say a lot of people did not think this day would come in terms of the transfer of the hostages who were alive. And Donald Trump deserves credit for this. You can like him, you can hate him. There's probably 5 people in the country who feel indifferent toward him, but it is impossible, I think, to look at this and say, this is not a day that Donald Trump's very unique diplomatic style, right? He is very transactional. He is very unorthodox. I think clearly, I don't think it works with Europe. I think it has worked here.
So with that style, roll what Trump said today about Netanyahu. We'll take it up on the other side.
This has been one of the greatest wartime presidents, and cigars and champagne, who the hell cares about that?
Trump there, obviously, Chris, referring to the sort of domestic political situation and the issues there from Netanyahu. But I think it gave us sort of a view into where Trump feels at the moment, which is he believes, as he said on Air Force One, the war is over. He was congratulating Netanyahu there, and now he's looking forward to the next phase.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think all politicians and all of politics have a little bit of fake it until you make it built into them, Democrats and Republicans. He is trying to talk and envision the future he wants into existence. I don't actually think, look, I've said many times, he is a guy who is prone to extreme exaggeration and lies at times. I actually don't think that's the case here. Look, we don't know what the future holds, but without the return of the hostages, and then we hope the Israelis pulling out of Gaza City, there is no future Middle East peace, right? So yes, these are steps. This is not the end. This is the beginning, but it is a beginning, and I think a lot of people didn't think we'd get there.
Mick, what do you think the next sort of days, months look like?
Yeah, in fact, it's the beginning of something else as well, which is success breeds success in this business. Trump has got momentum now. They have optimism. They're trusting their own ability to get stuff done. I don't think it's an accident that they some reporting today about the relationship with Russia. I think they're going to try and take this right into the next sort of dispute to see if they can build on it. Face it, the Europeans don't know what to do right now. The Europeans, a lot of them just don't understand Donald Trump to begin with. But oh my goodness, he just pulled off what many people, to your point, Chris, thought was never going to be possible.
Yeah.
So now they're probably going to be much more willing to follow his instinct on Russia and see if it works out the same way there.
I'm glad you said that because we're getting into it later in the show. But Mick, let me leave you with this. Trump right now is on Air Force One, right? He's headed back here. He'll land here, I don't know, later this evening at some point. So he's sitting back. He's watching the screen. He knows what happened. He's up in the air. I know you can't get inside Trump's mind, but you can better than anyone. What do you think he's thinking right now on Air Force One?
It's a combination. It worked, and we're winning, and that's fantastic. It's sort of everything he said that nobody believed is coming true. So you do have that. What's the biggest lie in politics? The biggest lie in politics is, I hate to say I told you so. Everybody loves to say I told you so, right? So that's part of that right now. And then it's also, okay, what comes next? How do we build on this? Trump, again, lives on momentum and optimism, and you cannot have more momentum and more optimism in the administration than you have tonight.
So Liz's line.
Blake, Blake, can I just very quickly add to Mick's point? Donald Trump has a capacity to step on his own positive messaging in very negative ways. He does it all the time. He did not do it today, right? Very on message. He read off the prompter. Speech was well written, to Mick's point. At both the Knesset and then in Egypt, right? We are talking about what they want to talk about. He didn't entertain sort of all these other questions and get the narrative 7 different ways to Sunday. Right. They're talking about they got this done, and that's what we're focused on. He's not a disciplined messenger, but he was in this instance.
And he said the words today in Israel that are so important to so many: never again and never forget, as he said that today in the heart of Israel. Mick, see you later in the show. Chris Cillizza, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you, my friend.
Catch you later throughout the week. All right, still to come here from the Hill. Mick was just alluding to this, right? As I was watching the president today, I thought to myself, man, what must Vladimir Putin be thinking right now? Because this is what the president said on Air Force One.
Do they want to have tomahawks going in that direction? I don't think so. I think I might speak to Russia about that, in all fairness.
So think about it. He was there heading east, and that was part of the message. What is Putin thinking? Plus, remember that massive market sell-off on Friday? Was it all just one big misunderstanding between Trump and Xi? We're back in 4 minutes here on The Hill. I'm Blake Burman. I thank you for being with us. All right, so halfway around the world and back in basically a day. Tonight, the president back on Air Force One after meeting with hostage families, speaking to the Israeli Knesset, meeting with world leaders in Egypt. And back here at home, applause, you could say, of a different kind after a whole lot of questions just the other day. Corner of Wall and Broad today, things were ripping after this post from the president before heading abroad. He posted on Truth Social over the weekend, quote, "It will all be fine," adding the U.S. wants to help China, not hurt it. Now, you'll remember on Friday, there was this threat of 100% tariffs against China. Both sides, though, seemingly reversing their tough talk in the recent days. China perhaps walking off its threats somewhat of export controls on rare earth minerals, leading to that moment today on Wall Street. So was this all just a multi-trillion-dollar misunderstanding? Back from his recent trip to China in the recent weeks with us tonight here on the Hill, Congressman Adam Smith, ranking member of the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman, thanks for being back with us once again. You had this $2 trillion sell-off on Friday, $1 trillion in gains back today. I don't know. I just watched this, unique, incredible moment in the Middle East, and I see what's going on with Trump and Xi, and I wonder from your perch if you think they could figure it out.
I think it's distinctly possible. Like I said, I was in China for 5 days. Yeah. I think we need to negotiate with China and figure out how to, coexist. And, economics are a huge part of that, tariffs and restrictions. So, yeah, I think there is the distinct possibility that we could negotiate a deal there. We've got a long way to go. Still many differences, both in terms of tariffs, non-tariff barriers, a whole bunch of different issues. But I'm hopeful that President Trump will continue to speak to Xi and that they will negotiate towards some understanding on that.
What was your takeaway from being there?
My biggest takeaway was China's certainly an authoritarian country. Do not get me wrong. We have a number of disputes with them. China is too obsessed with grabbing territory that they have some 100-year-old claims to, and that's very disruptive in Asia. But at the end of the day, China wants to grow economically, and they are tied into the global economy in a way that, say, for instance, Russia or Iran or certainly North Korea is not. China really can't afford to get into an all-out conflict with the U.S. any more than we can afford to get into an all-out conflict with them. Now, the devil's in the details. China certainly wants their fair advantage over whatever the negotiations are, so we're going to have to be tough negotiators. But I think this is a relationship that we can, in fact, fix. It does not have to be an inevitable conflict.
To the story of the day, Congressman, you have a unique view, obviously, ranking member House Armed Services Committee. As you look forward and as you saw what we all watched out of the Middle East today, what is your hope, Congressman, here going forward? And matched with that, what do you also think the reality is at the moment?
Well, I think the hope going forward is this turns into some sort of lasting peace. The reality is we've been here before. Now, I give credit to Trump, certainly. I think, getting to an end to this war, I think he was very instrumental. He stepped in, particularly in the last month or two, and really used his relationship with Netanyahu to put pressure on him to end this war. But people saying nobody thought we would ever see this. Well, you didn't really think that the war in Gaza was going to go on forever, all right? It was going to end. In fact, when Trump came into office, there was a ceasefire. And then we wound up with 8 more months of a war that really didn't need to be fought at that point. And
well, couldn't you make the argument? Couldn't you say that there was this moment right before the hostages? Some of them were returned right before, I believe it was the hours before he took office, right? And I guess maybe that was some of his influence.
Yeah. I mean, look, President Trump is really good at amping up, the credit for what he has done, the greatest political victory in the history of the country, and everything is the most amazing, unbelievable. Nobody ever thought they would ever see it before. I like to keep myself down in reality in terms of what we're dealing with. And that's going to be really important going forward. Because the lasting peace, for that to happen, there has to be some sort of future for the Palestinian people, which means that Hamas has to be kept down and out, number one. Number two, an alternative has to be found. And Netanyahu has spent 15 years trying to make sure that no alternative to Hamas could successfully breathe air. He has undermined the Palestinian Authority and a number of other Palestinian organizations. That has to change going forward. The Palestinians have to have a future. So Netanyahu has to do that. I think President Trump needs to stay actively engaged because he does have influence in that region. And then the Arab states need to live up to their commitments. They've been saying for, 18 months or more now that they have a vision for a future in Palestine that doesn't involve Hamas. They have to follow up on that. They have to put their money where their mouth is and stay engaged. And all of that is going to be really difficult and require sustained attention from all players involved.
All right, part of The View from Washington State tonight, Democrat Adam Smith, Ranking Member, House Armed Services Committee. See you again soon, Congressman.
Great. Thank you.
Of course. All right, still much more ahead. On this huge news day, the president trying not to stop at peace in the Middle East, if that's indeed what comes in the coming days, weeks, and months. The president possibly setting his sights on Iran next.
Yet even to Iran, whose regime has inflicted so much death on the Middle East, the hand of friendship and cooperation is open. I'm telling you, they want to make a deal.
Plus, are Russia's latest attacks a response to what the president said aboard Air Force One when we return here on the Hill? All right, welcome back. President Trump brokering the historic deal, the agreement between Israel and Hamas, phase one of the peace deal, playing out today as all 20 of the remaining hostages held by Hamas finally are back home tonight. Israel returning hundreds of prisoners in exchange. The president on his way back to the U.S. tonight, but already turning his attention to Ukraine.
But first we have to get Russia done. We got to get that one done. If you don't mind, Steve, let's focus on Russia first, all right? We'll get it done.
Just yesterday, the president threatened to send at least the possibility of Tomahawk missiles if Putin doesn't come to a deal.
I might say, look, if this war's not going to get settled, I'm going to send them Tomahawks. I may say that. The Tomahawk is an incredible weapon, very offensive weapon. And honestly, Russia does not need that.
This comes as Russia continues to attack Ukraine. Ukrainian President Zelensky saying that Russia has launched more than 3,100 drones and 92 missiles in the past week. With me now, retired Air Force Brigadier General John Teichert back with us here on the Hill. General, hello.
Blake, hello.
I was watching that speech and I thought to myself, my gosh, what could Putin be thinking? Obviously, the president there was talking to Israel, to the U.S., to the Middle East, to the world. But as he was aboard Air Force One, he threatened Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. And as you heard him there, he basically was saying in Israel, all right, we have this other war, too, that we got to wind down.
I saw, as he was standing there in the Knesset, being so well received by the members of parliament in Israel, that the gleam in his eye that translated him into the parliament in Ukraine, he could see himself brokering that peace. It's going to take the same combination of strength and collaboration to make it happen, but I think he's already just starting to think through how to make that happen soon.
What do you think Putin's thinking tonight watching all this?
I think he sees that now we have an emboldened president, that the president has gotten a taste for what does it take, this mix of strength and collaboration. And I think now, like the president said, Steve Witkoff and others are going to focus their attention on the one big remaining deal to be had, which is stopping the war against Ukraine.
That's obviously the one big one, but then there's also Iran, right? And the president talked up today the concept, let's roll it real quick, talked up the concept of maybe some sort of a deal with Iran as well.
Yet even to Iran, whose regime has inflicted so much death on the Middle East, the hand of friendship and cooperation is open. I'm telling you, they want to make a deal. That's all I do in my life. I make deals. I'm good at it. I've always been good at it. And I know when they want. Even if they said, we don't want to make a deal, I can tell you they want to make a deal.
So it begs the question if that's next. Or one of them next, I guess.
The president, when he met with Netanyahu 2 weeks ago in the Oval Office, during his remarks, mentioned eventually to the Abraham Accords.
Yeah.
I think he sees what happened today in Israel as the first of a very long and broad stretching set of circumstances that drastically improves conditions in the Middle East and beyond.
So what do we get? What do we get first? A deal with the Ayatollah or a deal with Putin?
I think that he's focusing on Putin, that the energy of the United States is going to be focused on that consequence or that conflict. And if we can get over that hump, then the world's his oyster for other things around the planet.
All right. General Teichert, thank you, sir.
Thanks, Blake.
Thanks for coming in. Appreciate it. All right. Joining me now here on the Hill, you know both of them. Sean Spicer, host of the Sean Spicer podcast and News Nation political contributor, and Lindsey Granger, host of Rising on the Hill. Lindsey, Sean.
Blake,
how are you?
Good.
Nice to see you both.
Nice to see you.
What about that? Like, Putin came to Alaska. Trump flew a B-52 over his head.
Yeah.
He goes over there to sign this, or to celebrate this deal. And on the way over, Sean, he says, well, maybe there could be Tomahawk missiles coming Ukraine's way.
Well, coming Russia's way, ultimately.
Coming Russia's way, right.
That's right.
For
Via
Ukraine to Russia.
That's right.
Yeah.
But look, I think this is the point, is that it's an unconventional strategy. In the past, diplomacy shifted between Republicans and Democrats, but largely was the same. These foreign policy gurus who talked about how you have to follow a certain path, a certain trajectory when it came to solving problems, achieving peace in a region or whatever, or dealing with a leader. Trump is highly unconventional. The idea, to your point, he brings over Putin, flies the B-52s over his head, and hey, look what's up there.
Yeah.
Could be coming your way too, just like happened to Iran. I think the point is he knows how to do things differently. He doesn't follow the playbook as has been written the last 50 years. But at the end of the day, whether it's tariffs domestically or that kind of foreign policy, he gets results for the American people, and that's what really counts.
I think Russia has been relentless. They attacked Ukraine's power grid over the weekend and tried to put them out of commission. And I think after rolling out the red carpet, quite literally, for Putin and all the conversations, the multiple phone calls that happened this year as well, the level of respect that or the lack thereof that he's seeing between Putin, he has to be a little bit more aggressive in his approach, which is likening him more to the strategy that President Biden took. So I think he's just trying to get in front of this before the world, while the world is praising him, to look like he has a hold over this
I think Lindsay's got partially right on this. I think the big difference is we have held back on giving them really offensive weaponry, right? The intelligence and the weaponry to allow them to go on the attack and inflict real damage on Russia. It wasn't just the Tomahawks. Earlier, President Trump indicated that he would be willing to give them greater intelligence. Those two things combined, I think Putin knows Trump's feeling emboldened right now. He feels on top of his game, and that he'll get the more respect from world leaders that he got today if he can solve this problem.
Let me ask you about the response, Lindsay, from Democrats. Bill Clinton, Chuck Schumer praised Trump. They named Trump and the Trump administration by name. Barack Obama the other day did not mention Trump. Bernie Sanders, I was looking at his statement today. He used part of it to bash Israel. I haven't seen anything from Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. That's just some of the spectrum, but some of the biggest names in the Democratic Party. What surprised you, if anything, sort of about the reaction from that side of the aisle?
Well, I certainly think that this should just be a blanket statement. This is a big deal for the country and for President Trump. This is something that, to watch the imagery of Palestinian people, Israeli people celebrating simultaneously side by side on TV screens was something we haven't seen in 2 years.
Yeah,
something that both sides were calling for.
Look, you were here early this morning as well, and just to watch all of that live was like you realized the moment as you were watching it.
Right. And I think that needs to be said. And two things can be true at once. While at the same time, I personally don't think that President Trump deserves a Nobel Peace Prize, I do admire what he was able to accomplish. And both administrations have something to do with why this even dragged on so long. I do believe that you can have two thoughts at once and applaud what was done and also say there's a lot of work and questions to be answered with Palestinian people about the conversation he's having in Egypt, about how to move forward and make sure that people are implemented and safe so this doesn't happen in Israel again, but also so that people are able to rebuild a community and it doesn't become Miami Beach for President Trump.
Look, you can make this like a sports analogy, right? I can appreciate a good play that the Jets made. That doesn't make me any less of a Patriots fan. Right. And that's the thing, is that sometimes you can just applaud the play. And Lindsay's right. I mean, to say, hey, President Trump did something good for the country, did something good for the region, did something good for the world, doesn't make you any less of a Democrat or a liberal. And I think there are times when both sides can acknowledge goodness of the other side without meaning that they're losing any credibility on their own side.
I want to ask you on the other side, same question I asked Mulvaney, which is, what do you think Trump is thinking right now on Air Force One? He's
in seventh heaven.
Hold that thought. Yeah. Other side of the break. There's a lot to get into with all this. The president with a monumental prediction for the future.
This is the historic dawn of a new Middle East.
All right, I'll get Spicer to answer that question. The president aboard Air Force One right now, what's going through his mind? And what is before him as he arrives home? Other side of the break.
Wednesday, Chris Cuomo, Bill O'Reilly, Stephen A. Smith, and more.
Join us for a nationwide conversation.
Cuomo, live from the Kennedy Center, the NewsNation Town Hall, Wednesday, 8, 7 Central.
For a night of television you cannot afford to miss.
Only on NewsNation, news for all Americans.
And the president's address before the Knesset today, the Israeli parliament, he gave his vision for the future of the Middle East in the midst of cause for great celebration in that region today.
This is the end of the age of terror and death and the beginning of the age of faith and hope and of God. It's the start of a grand concord and lasting harmony for Israel and all the nations of what will soon be a truly magnificent region. I believe that so strongly. This is the historic dawn of a new Middle East.
And after the historic day, the president heads home, where challenges await back here at home. The country has reached day 3, or really the Congress, of a government shutdown, no real off-ramp in sight. And then out west, anti-ICE protests in Portland still underway. No signs of slowing down there. Just some of what awaits the president before he lands here in the upcoming hours. Full panel here with me now here on the Hill. Mick Mulvaney, former chief of staff in the first Trump administration, News Nation contributor. Yemisi Egbawali, former White House press office chief of staff in the Biden administration. Lindsey Granger, as you know, host of Rising on the Hill. Sean Spicer back with me once again. Hello to you all. Thanks for being in on what is...
You didn't give Sean's resume.
I know.
He's former press secretary, News Nation contributor, host of the Sean Spicer.
Actual. I mean, I wasn't acting. I had the job.
Okay. There you go. I asked you what Trump, before the break is, I asked you what you think he's feeling now heading back after all of this.
He's elated. I think he's just sitting in that office, that compartment, or actually, more importantly, he probably moved to the conference room, which is a room down, because he wants everybody in there excited. Everyone on that plane is wired, exhausted and wired at the same time. This trip, think about it. He left Sunday night, landed in Israel, did all of that, the speech, all that kind of stuff, greeted the hostages, on to Egypt, signed the deal, got back on the plane. He'll land at about 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock this morning. And then, as Mick knows, by about 6 a.m., he'll be picking up the phone, calling everybody. But he's elated. The staff's excited. I mean, this is one where you're running purely on adrenaline right now.
What comes next for him?
Unfortunately, it's going to be Epstein. That's what they're coming back to, because as soon as Congress comes in, they're going to swear in the new Democrat member of Congress, and they're going to go right back to this. And the press is going to love it, because so many people in the press can't stand that he's actually had a success. So they're going to be looking for something else to talk about, anything other than the success.
Or how predictable Mick Mulvaney is. Just so we're clear. That's how predictable. But first of all, can I just...
Hold on. For context, in the commercial break, Sean thought Mick's answer of what comes next. Mick wrote it down. It was Epstein. So both of you went there.
No. I went where I thought Mick would go.
Oh, okay. Is that where it's going? Because unquestionably, this is a huge day for the Middle East, for the world, for the region, for the president, for those families. I could list another dozen of them. But then when he gets back home, there are big challenges before him.
Yeah, I actually agree with Mick here. Adelita Grahala, we've been waiting on her to be sworn in. That has been one of the biggest pressure points for House Dems. There are a lot of folks that I even talked to today that work on the Hill that are looking for some kind of energy and some kind of boost. And having her come in and pivoting right back to Epstein is going to be one of those top issues.
I mean, we're 2 weeks into a government shutdown. It's beautiful that he's doing things abroad, and this was a serious issue, so I don't want to... I totally give his credit in his last block, but also our government is not working right now. It's shut down. And so to act like we could just come home and continue to celebrate all week when we've been 2 weeks of closed, that's worth having a conversation about. People are concerned about health care, and that's a rightful concern to have
it is. Fair enough.
Here in America. So,
Absolutely.
I mean, they can celebrate and watch the news, but they also are worried their premiums will double next year.
Well, look, let's just go through the schedule. He comes back tomorrow. There's going to be an awarding posthumously for Charlie Kirk, right? The government is closed. The House is not coming back anytime soon. I mean, I don't know how long it can handle. The Democrats are holding out for this October 18th rally, No Kings rally. That's what they.
No.
Absolutely. They need this thing. My point is, I do think that the Epstein thing will come back in when the House goes back into session. But let's be clear what's going to happen. The discharge petition passes, right? It goes over to the Senate. Thune and the Senate's not going to take that up. The president's not going to sign it. So the press, Mick's right, the press will get all riled up about it. But the reality is this thing's not going anywhere. And so it will get some press attention that it happened, and that's it. But we're going to get back. I mean, look, whether you agree or not of some of the policy, healthcare is going to be a major issue. Opening the government is going to be a major issue. Making sure the troops get paid is going to be a major issue. There's a big trade war potentially going on with China, a meeting on the sidelines of ASEAN or APEC. I mean, there's a lot that's happening that's real substantive right now. And so I think that the Epstein thing may plop up, for a day or two. But at the end of it, this is not something that has legs.
So it is day 13 of this shutdown. There's no real off-ramp. You were saying this No King's Day protest. You don't believe that'll bring Democrats back into town to open the government. I guess what is the off-ramp here as we're now 2 weeks into this?
Yeah, No Kings. I think all of the activists that exist on X will be at No Kings. I think members of Congress will stick to their districts and their states and focus on the real work that gets done. Look, what happens is Democrats hold strong. Schumer and Jeffries have done a really good job of assuaging the fears and concerns of those who are more centrist and moderate. There are some people who are feeling some pressure points, like John Ossoff, who's running in Georgia and might feel some pressure from the constituents that live there. But, I mean, a shutdown is just a game of chicken, and the person who gives up first is the person that takes the blame. And messaging is everything on this shutdown.
See, I disagree with this idea of giving up and losing, because I don't think they're the same thing. In 2013, we really did feel like we won because we planted our flag in the ground on Obamacare. In 2019, we felt the same way about immigration. And look, fast forward to 2024, everybody knew where Donald Trump was on immigration. There was no question as who was stronger on immigration in that election, in large part because we are willing to shut the government down above. Even though we gave in at the end, I don't think giving in necessarily equates to losing.
Democrats have more to lose right now because they lost an election and they don't have much control in the Senate or the House. So it's kind of like if they give in first, if they give in first and don't push through with health care, their most winning issue, then what are they running on? What are they going into the midterms with? What wins do they have to lie their hat on? So I think it's a little bit different. Plus, there's everything going on right now in Chicago and other countries other cities across the country that is going to be on the agenda. Speaking of what President Trump is walking back into, where people are saying you're militarizing our streets and making Americans uncomfortable. So there are a slew of issues that President Trump can't just come over because he had one win, which is why I said we should celebrate it, but look at the full picture that America, largely outside looking in, looks like a disaster.
But if we want to go a little further down the calendar, we have the first week in November, we're going to have a big election. I think New Jersey and Virginia are both going Republican. Jack Ciattarelli is going to... I'm willing to put money down. This isn't just a talking point. Jack Ciattarelli is going to win New Jersey, and I think we will sweep all 3 constitutional offices in Virginia. Jay Jones is the Terry McAuliffe of this cycle, and this has been an albatross around the Democrats' neck. The polling, the bottom has dropped out on all the Democratic candidates. Jason Miyares is now up outside the margin of error. John Reed is tied, and Winsome Sears is within 2. But the bottom line is, going in the last 3 weeks, the wind is at their back.
So this is not all but some of what is before the president, and I guess both sides of the aisle when the president lands here. Mick, the final question, I asked this of the general. As we saw the president on the world stage today, obviously a great moment with the hostages coming out and the president talking about Iran and Russia, Ukraine. A deal with the Ayatollah or a deal with Putin first, or neither?
Well, I mean, you take either one, right? Then either one would be a huge success. I think Russia still bedevils him. I think he wants to solve that problem. I think he really doesn't like war, by the way, and I don't know why people don't believe him now after seeing him in office for 4 years and 9 months. He really doesn't like war. He wants to stop it. So I think that's a priority. Again, he feeds off of momentum and optimism, and he's got both of those things going right now. He's got Europe in his back pocket because they're looking at him going, maybe Trump is right about how to handle these sorts of things. So maybe there's some progress in Russia.
Thank y'all. Appreciate it on what is an absolutely huge day. Great to have y'all in. All right, still to come. Other side of the break. The 20 remaining hostages free and heading home. Many heartwarming stories of families being reunited. We've seen these videos throughout the day. After the break, I want to show you a very special one. Stay with us. Pause for celebration worldwide. But it's also important to remember that for just the hell that they have been through, they all have their own stories. You might remember this video from October 7th. The then 26-year-old Noah Argamani kidnapped while fleeing from the Nova Music Festival massacre, in which 278 people were murdered. 44 others kidnapped as well. Now, in June of last year, after 245 days of captivity, Noah and 3 other hostages were rescued from inside Gaza by Israeli forces. Noah was then reunited with her family shortly after. But now I want to go back to that October 7th video because there was someone else that was there as well. Noah's boyfriend, Avi Natan Or, also kidnapped on that day. Now, this is Avi's mother holding up his poster, and you can see what he looked like prior to all of this. Avi was one of the 20 surviving hostages released today after more than 2 years. He's now back with his mother and his family. But there was one more reunion to take place. Avi and Noah, 2 years after the kidnapping on October 7th. Together again, hopefully feeling only joy, young love, and celebration on what has turned out to be an incredible October day. We saw so many scenes of this all across Israel today on an historic day in which the President of the United States was there as well. Elizabeth Vargas reports is next. She is, of course, following the breaking developments out of the Middle East. Elizabeth, coming up just 30 seconds from now here on News Nation. It has been, as I mentioned, an historic day. I was on air with Kelly Beeson this morning, starting at 6 Eastern, as all of this was playing out. And we have seen the scenes throughout. I leave you here with Elizabeth Vargas reports. Coming up next, I'm Blake Burman. I thank you so much for being with us. Elizabeth starts right now.